Hello, my name is Sterling McKinley, and you are watching In the Black Podcast, where each week we interview diverse entrepreneurs and we share their journey. We share their ups and downs, their challenges, but most importantly, the steps they took to build a profitable business that operates and stays in the black. Today we have a great guest, Mr. Dipo Adesina. He does everything. He's an investor, he's a serial entrepreneur, he's an author. Dipo, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the program. Once again, I went to your LinkedIn profile, and man, you do everything. You're overseas, you're in the states here, so I can't summarize all you do quickly. So I want you to take 30 seconds and just tell us exactly who you are and what it is that you exactly do.
Sounds great. I think what sums up what I do is the word serial entrepreneur, right? And when we think about the word serial entrepreneur,
Hmm.
you're pretty much engaged in different business ventures. So
Right.
I've been fortunate enough to start, one or two businesses here in the United States.
Okay.
We have several businesses in Africa as well.
Right.
But as far as like my area of passion is definitely financial literacy. So I do a
Okay.
lot of speaking engagement on that as well. So
Right.
depending on who I'm talking to, I can touch on different businesses
Hmm.
and some nuggets from there.
Okay. Great. All right. So let's start out. Let's start out with the journey again. So how do you get started being an entrepreneur? What is kind of your first entry into running your own business?
So I think it kind of runs in our family, and I think if
Okay.
I were to go back as to when I really started, I would say probably middle school. And
Okay.
of course, at that time, you don't see yourself as an entrepreneur. But I recall,
Right.
having before to buy candy, take it to school, sell it for $1, make 50 cent profit.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of us kind of started out that way.
Yeah. Me
Then
too.
moving to
Yep.
college, started out selling clothing from the trunk of my car, buying
Okay.
wholesale, reselling. So
Right.
that was like the genesis of it all. But then as you
Okay.
start to get older, you start to think more business minded and how to create
Right.
structure around different businesses. So from there, we started to really build different businesses
Hmm.
overseas. That will be
Okay.
the beginning of entrepreneurship.
Okay. Well, let me ask you that because when you talk about the whole thing now is about building in Africa and other countries, but tell me about the steps. What does it take to be an international entrepreneur? How does that happen?
Well, I think it has to do with your passion, first
Okay.
and foremost. So I think for me, because originally I'm from Nigeria, right?
Right.
So there was that connection to back home to really want to see changes
Okay.
back then, right?
Right.
Which can be a little bit different from a typical African American who wants
Hmm.
to go overseas. So that passion was there. I was
Right.
my brother and I, we were able to see certain needs, and with our
Hmm.
experience here in the
Right.
United States, we were able to take that back home and really start
Hmm.
to make some things happen.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I love what you said. I think it's really important in business, to really and sometimes do what you know, and if you see a need,
Absolutely.
find a way to meet that. So, um, when did you come to United States? I know you said you're from Nigeria, but when did you come to United States?
So yeah, I was actually born here, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but my parents took us back home when we were a lot
Oh,
younger. Then we came
okay.
back. But I always like to claim my roots, so I always tell
Right.
people I'm Nigerian.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. All right. Great. All right. So you talked about, selling clothes in college, doing wholesale, but what was that first business that you really, you had an LLC, had a structure, you talked about starting some companies, I believe, in Nigeria. So tell me about that first, the company. What exactly was it? What did you sell? What you offer? And how did you get
Yeah.
started?
So the very first business that I did that would have really nice structure around it was actually wholesaling electronics.
Hmm.
And once again, I kind of stumbled on that, and
Right.
I think that's really what usually happens with a lot of entrepreneurs. So to kind of
Hmm.
give you the backstory, my wife was in Nigeria at the time, right? Young college dude, just graduated and wanted to go back home, right? But once again, I
Right.
was thinking to myself, what are some of those things that I can buy to actually resell to make a profit back
Right.
home? And one day, the true story, I was praying and this word just popped into my mind,
Hmm.
cell phones. So I
Hmm.
went online, started researching like wholesale, and I started to
Right.
see like the massive opportunity within that.
Hmm.
So
Right.
that was like my real first structured business. And from
Okay.
there, started building connections with people, as far as shipping back home. And, from
Right.
there, it was just, that was it from there.
Okay, great. So, what were some of the lessons you learned from starting that business? What are some of the challenges, and what are some things that you learned from that early, success and struggles that you now use in your current companies?
Excellent. So there are two, I mean, it's from both sides, right? So as far as like
Okay.
the wholesale standpoint, right? So when you're in this nature, well, in the electronic world, you have all types of people, right? So
Right.
when you're buying things wholesale, especially if you're buying used products, sometimes they don't work, and you not knowing, you're buying the whole wholesale, sending
Mm-hmm.
it to your client. By the time they get it, they send it to the end user. It's not working, so it comes back
Right.
to me. But unfortunately, I can't return back to the wholesaler, right?
Yeah.
So it was a whole lot of pain point at that point.
Right.
Another challenge that we had was the price fluctuation, right? So, you might have purchased something for $1, but when you
Mm-hmm.
take it talking about the conversion rate, completely different. Sometimes you
Right.
end up losing. So, those were some of the basic challenges that we faced. But as time went on, you kind of get smarter as to, how to, um, how to better negotiate, right? Both
Right.
from the wholesaler as well as the end client.
Great. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's kind of fast forward a little bit more to presently. So I'm looking at your
Gotcha.
LinkedIn bio, and you have several projects going. Some are Rwanda, some doing e-bikes, all kind of stuff. So kind of tell me about some of the ventures that you're involved in right now.
Great. So our Rwanda project is probably the biggest project we've ever embarked on, from a
Okay.
business standpoint, because it's one of those things. So when you think about Uber, DoorDash,
One quick question: Why Rwanda? What made you choose that location?
good. So that's one of the questions I often get. So
Mm-hmm.
the environment is conducive
Okay.
for foreign investment,
Right.
right? And I think Rwanda has done a great job as far as branding themselves to
Okay.
attract foreigners to come, and establish their business ventures.
Right. Okay.
So in going to Rwanda, once again, we just kind of saw the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
We saw their primary mode of transportation, which
Right.
was motorcycles. And one of their goal was to really reduce the
Mm-hmm.
emission rate in the country.
Okay.
So because we're exposed in the United States, we kind of thought about in what way can we come in to kind of help the government within this challenge that they're having.
Right.
So we came up with the idea of number one, having smart bikes. So that was
Mm-hmm.
our very first project. Then, we now transition into electric motorcycles,
Okay.
which is by far one of the biggest, businesses that we've launched over there so far.
Right. Okay. All right. Great. One thing I'm always interested about being an entrepreneur, I think we all have somebody helps us along the way. So, what were some of those mentors and people that help you along the way, and even now that kind of help you, guide you and steer you in the right direction?
Yeah, I think from a mentorship standpoint, personally for me,
Mm-hmm.
most of our mentorship comes from watching other people in the
Mm,
industry.
right.
Because sometimes you might not have that direct access,
Okay.
but your ability to study their success and their failure also serves as a mentor, sort of like a mentorship for you. So we were able to study a lot of people in the industry to kind of see their pitfalls earlier on,
Right.
and really work on that. Then from
Mm-hmm.
starting a business in Rwanda, which is a country that we're not from,
Right.
we kind of have to learn by experience,
Okay.
right? So we spent a lot of money in R&D. We spent a lot of time really understanding the culture.
Right.
And that's one of the things when you're doing business in a foreign country, you got
Mm-hmm.
to understand the terrain that you're
Right.
dealing with. Which, I mean, we were quite surprised, right? Because we went in with a
Mm-hmm.
different notion, but
Right.
after a while, we starting to realize, hey, we gotta adjust our mindset to
Mm-hmm.
fit the nature of the culture that
Right.
we're, doing business in.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I'm in marketing, and I think people still deal with demographics a lot. The age, income, where do you live, and those are all kind of surface questions. But I think what you just hit on is really thinking about psychographics. understanding
Yeah,
how people think, understanding what the real need is. And I think,
absolutely.
in the business, if you really get a real understanding of your customer, not the top line stuff, how old they are and what they live, but
Right.
really what they need, I think you have a better understanding about that. So
Absolutely.
tell me about your other venture. I see you do some farming and you have some. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so our farming, we started back in 2016 with the
Okay.
farming. That's actually based in Nigeria.
Right.
Once again, that was actually born out of a need as far as
Okay.
what's currently going on in Nigeria,
Right.
um, food shortage, right?
Hmm.
So when I read an article that basically stated that Nigerians will starve to death by 2050 if nothing was
Wow.
done about the current state of food production,
Hmm.
I'm sitting here in the United States and I'm scrolling on Facebook when I now came across this article. So that was like my initial introduction into agriculture.
Right.
And since then, we've been able to run quite a number of successful projects,
Okay.
to really help in, you know, growing the food sector in
Right.
Nigeria.
Okay. Great. All right. So we talked about a lot of different things you've done in the past and some now, but I guess just kind of pulling back, how do you keep all the balls, in the air? How do you manage all that? Or any tips you can give to how, it's great to have one business, but how do you scale to have multiple companies? How does that work?
Yeah, everything boils down to teamwork, right?
Okay.
Having the right people on your team. You can't obviously run everything by yourself. So for all the businesses that we run,
Hmm.
there are key players who are actually facilitating that business
Right.
because that's what they're good at. So for
Hmm.
example, my brother and one of my other partners had to move to Rwanda to
Oh.
kind of oversee that project.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a huge sacrifice. So
Right.
for me, I mainly just go back and forth, right, to
Hmm.
Rwanda, back to the United States. Same
Right.
thing with Nigeria, right? Have to get some key players in
Hmm.
to kind of manage that business. So that's another part of the challenge as well, getting wrong people on your team,
Right.
because we've had situations where I mean we had major setbacks because you know people that we thought were the right key players were
Hmm.
obviously not.
Right.
Um, that can be a huge blow to your business.
Right.
So that's part of the learning curve that we had to go through.
Hmm.
In different ventures as well.
Okay, great. All right, well, moving on, we have a segment that I call Explain That Gram. So, what we do is we go to your Instagram account, we try to find a photo that's funny, different, that's compelling, and ask you to explain it. So, this photo is you here looking like a mayor, like the president. You're holding a microphone and you're speaking. Kind of tell me what was going on in this photo and kind of tell me about this day.
Yeah. So that day was probably one of the biggest days in Rwanda as far as the introduction of e-mobility, right? Because that day was the day we launched our e-bikes, e-motorcycles. So if you see behind me in that picture, you probably see like e-charging station, right?
Right.
That was the first of its kind that people have really ever seen in Rwanda. And that picture's probably not showing it, but all around us are
Mm-hmm.
different, motorcyclists really just in awe as to like what this thing is. So
Right.
that was me kind of introducing it to everybody,
Okay.
letting people know that this was going to be nationwide, not just in the capital of the country.
Right.
And yeah, and we had quite a number of successful people that also came. Well, a lot of prominent people in the government that actually showed up for that event as well.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're coming up on the end of our interview. So, is there anything you want to share with us? Any inspirational quotes or something that helps you kind of get through some of those down times? Do you want to share any of that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is always keeping your eyes on a vision,
Okay.
right? So when you start a business, it's definitely not going to be all rosy, right?
Right.
And if you're not in it to win it, or if you don't have a vision as to what you want to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
in most cases, people give up.
Yeah.
And that's where you probably heard the stats that most people's business fail,
Mm-hmm.
within 3 to 5 years.
Right.
Not because the business can't succeed, but the tenacity to
Mm-hmm.
keep going to
Right.
break that barrier. Most people
Right.
just don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to develop a tough skin, believe in your vision, and even when other people don't believe in it, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of one of the biggest things that has been helping me and my partners throughout all our journeys as we continue to build our businesses.
Okay, great. All right, so closing, we have one question that I ask every guest. So right now, let's say we end this podcast interview. You go outside, you look down, and you see a large check on the ground for $10 million. Tell me, what do you do with that money?
Interesting. I've actually thought about that question before. That what if one day I just come
Right,
across like a bag of money?
right.
Um, I think the first thing I'll do is probably call the authority, local authority, just
Okay.
because I've been I was brought up and raised in the church, right? So I
Right.
have certain values that
Mm-hmm.
just kind of keeps me guided.
Right.
Now of course, you know, it, I wouldn't take that money for myself. I've had a
Mm-hmm.
situation. Let me tell you a real life story before we
Okay.
wrap this up.
All right, great.
I usually exercise every morning and I go jogging, right?
Right.
And one day I found a $20 bill, right?
Okay.
So of course I went on social media, took a picture with it, and I asked people what to
Oh,
do with
wow.
the money because $20 is not a lot of money that you
Right.
calling people for,
Mm-hmm.
and most people say give it away, So that day as I was driving, I saw a homeless guy begging for money, took the $20 bill and I just handed it to him.
Right.
And I could see like his face just light up because that's large money.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about doing the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So more than likely, I will probably get a check or money to the local authority and whatever they deem fit, they do
Right.
with it.
Okay. All right, great. I like that. Okay. All right. So you do a lot of things. Tell people how can they find you online and how can they book you for service if they want to learn more about what you do.
Sure. Well, to book me for service, you can check out my website, www.dipo, DIPO, ADESINA.com. And you can find me on any one of my social media handles with Dipo_Adesina. Although be careful, especially on Instagram, TikTok, I have a lot of people
Yeah, I've seen
that
that.
yeah, it's even crazier on
Right.
TikTok.
Oh, really? Wow.
So yeah, but of course, like whichever account has the largest follower on
Mm-hmm.
TikTok, that's my account. On
Okay.
Instagram, not so much, but definitely beware.
Right. Okay. Great. Well, once again, thank you for being on the program, sharing your journey and some of your tips. I learned a few things as well. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Well, once again, that was the interview with Mr. Dipo Adesina. We learned a lot about what he does. I learned a few things. I hope you did too. About how to structure your business, about having the right partnerships, and I think one key thing he said too that I really liked is we live in this culture now that everybody's saying get a mentor, get a mentor. You need a mentor, but I like what he said that you can learn from the sidelines, just surveying and just watching people in the industry and what they do. So once again, thank you for viewing the podcast today. Once again, we play this podcast every Thursday at 5 p.m. We'll be sharing once again stories of diverse entrepreneurs, their challenges, their struggles, up and down, but most importantly, how they stay in the black. So once again, thank you. We'll see you again right here on next Thursday at 5 p.m. Take care. Bye.